Welcome. In this video, we're going to discuss about pointers, key pointers for Chapter 16, advertisements, public relations, and sales promotion. Chapter 16 is more like extension of Chapter 15, so some of the concepts are pretty much overlapped. So Chapter 16 is about more like an informational chapter adding on to Chapter 15. Okay, so if you're kind of still confused about the basic concept or promotion kind of things as part of the marketing mix, please go back to Chapter 16 and check them out and come back later for Chapter 16. Okay, one thing I'd like to mention about is this is the last chapter in our class. So adding on to the reason that this is the extension of Chapter 15, I'm not going to just put a lot of things that I've done before. So pretty much more like a repetition, a reminder, a little extension for what has been done based on what we have done so far in the previous chapters. Okay. So here comes the learning objectives. Once again, if you go to page 290, you can find those learning objectives, learning outcomes. That applies to every class which have a textbook in the class. Please don't skip the learning objective, learning outcome at the beginning of each chapter. Okay. So first thing I'd like to talk about is discussing the effect of advertising. Okay, advertising on the market share and consumers. Okay. So once again, you guys seen this before in chapter 15, so I'm not going to mention it about again. I just put it as a reminder. So as you can see here, they already contains about sales promotion, advertisement, and public relations. Is that right? So these are the key functions of promotions. We already covered from chapter 15. So once again, this chapter only covers additional information, more like extensions. So I don't have to go that much far, stretching out what has been already said in the textbook. Okay. So one thing I'd like to talk about is the numbers related to promotion and advertisement. So if you go to page 291, there are a bunch of statistics in terms of how much budget they're spending among the here in the corporates here in the United States. For example, like Procter & Gamble, they spending $4.3 billion in the United States just for advertisement, and $10.4 billion worldwide. So as you can see that they spending almost half of the budget just for here in the United States market, right? So that's that. They only also talk about if you go to bottom was 291 on the left side, 97% of companies that have invested in developing analytic programs believe that such programs are of strategic importance to the organization. So there are some kind of tools, for example, Google Analytics as well, especially in social media marketing, for example. They can check out what's the kind of number of kind of stream, or if they just post some kind of related, any kind of a publicity video kind of things. So it is always a good idea to have search analytic tools as part of their promotion impact, so that they can measure how much impact or how much effect that their promotion or marketing and advertisement has, okay, on their specific market. Okay. The second thing I like to put an emphasis is advertising response functions. You can see the summary at the bottom of 291. On top of this definition, please keep in mind what it says for the background reason why it is critical concept. Because first thing they talk about is, first, beyond a certain level of spelling for advertisement, sales promotion, diminishing return set-ins. So what it says about is, in a certain amount of budget for their advertisement, for example, it has a positive impact when it comes to maximizing revenue and increasing the sales. But once they reaching to that certain point, okay, no matter how much money they're actually spending on their advertisement populations, it's not going to be that much have an impact as they have before. Make sense to you guys? Okay, that's what it is, the basic idea of advertising response function. Okay, the second reason is, if you go to page 292, it's talking about the second reason is new brand tend to require higher spending for advertisement and sales promotion, is that a certain minimum level of exposure is needed to measurably affect the purchase habits. So for example, like if you only do the advertisement just a couple of times throughout the months, throughout the year, is it going to be that much impact as those different advertisements having consistent exposure to the certain target populations? Okay, that's a totally different impact, right? That's why there's also like a flip side coin. That's why the concept of advertising response functions. So on the other hand, they're supposed to spend the money until the certain limit. Once they go on passing the certain limit, it's not going to be that much have impact as they're supposed to have. The other flip side of coin is they're talking about it because, especially for newly developed brand or newly started kind of business, they're supposed to have a consistent exposure to the target customers. Okay, so that's the idea for containing the two background reasons for advertising response function. Okay. And also, if you go to page 292, it is talking about the impact of advertisement on the consumers. Okay, so they're talking about still, we know that in chapter 16 we learned about the social media marketing, online marketing, how much impact it has nowadays, how much increasing impact, how much significant impact it has to the market nowadays. But still, if you look at the page 292. At the bottom of the page, you can see that interestingly, despite the proliferation of new technology options, consumers still spend a lot of time consuming traditional media. So a lot of people still kind of using TV, watching TV. They still use the desktop, laptop, and tablets. Okay, rather than, for example, like a cell phone. Or although we know that we already talked about how significant number of consumers spending their time when it comes to purchase decision by using their cell phone or different kind of electronic gadgets to make a purchase decision. But still, on the other hand, the significant portion of the consumers still heavily dependent on using traditional media for a purchase decision. Okay, so once again, these two concepts, okay, advertising response function, the impact of AD, we just talked about the flip side of coin. Okay, flip side of coin for each one of them. So please keep in mind those as part of the critical concepts. Okay. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the major types of advertisement. It's not complicated. If you go to page 292, 293, broadly there are two categories. They're talking institutional advertising, and second thing is product advertising, right? Among those institutional advertising, you guys already know about the concept of it from the reading oceans, so I'm not going to repeat it. But one thing I'd like to focus on the institutional advertising is advocacy advertising. So if you look at the example like Airbnb, they're talking about hashtag publicity advertisement for we accept. We believe no matter who you are, where you're from, who you love, or who you worship, we all belong. The world is more beautiful the more you accept. Okay, so those kind of institutional, more like advocacy, what they believe in general as a global or general value in no matter where they are, right? And so those kind of things are pretty much the good example for institutional advertisement. The second thing I like to talk about is product advertising. It's not complicated. Once again, the product advertising is they're talking about specific benefits of their product and service to deliver the feature, the information of the feature of their products. Okay, so they're talking about pioneering advertising. So especially if they're kind of coming into the new market, they're talking about competitive advertising. For example, they're talking about, you might have seen a lot of commercials from Geico using competitive advertising, discussing the attribute of brand, how little time it takes to get a quote. So they putting a lot of emphasis for that part as well, right? You might have seen a lot comparative advertising. You can see the picture on page 294. They compared Kellogg's, compared their Pop-Tarts with a toaster strudel, right? Between the baked and fried. So those kind of things. It's nothing complicated. If you read them through, it's very straightforward concept. The next thing we have to talk about is the creative decision in developing advertising campaign. So one thing I like to talk about, I already mentioned, pointed out by using reading assurance, but I like to talk about Dagmar and IDA. We already discussed about the concept of IDA, so if you're kind of still confused about it, please go back to chapter 15 and check them out again. So DAGMA is the about defining advertising goals for measured advertising results. So they're supposed to have a target audience, they're supposed to have a specified measure of effectiveness and time frame. So especially for second thing for talking about as the specific measure of effectiveness, it's more like analytic tools. We already mentioned about, we already discussed right at the beginning of this point of discussion that like Google Analytics, by using those, what's the number of clicks, what's the number of kind of followers kind of things. So those kind of numbers can be a kind of guideline when it comes to measuring the effectiveness of their kind of advertising tools. Okay. And next thing we have to talk about is the product benefits. If you go to page 295, when it comes to talking about identifying product benefit, they talk about attributes and benefits. Okay, so there are some good examples for that part. Nothing complicated. Okay, AD appeals. Okay, so they're supposed to have a unique selling proposition. If you can find it, the concept on page 296, especially exhibit 16.1, they're talking about common advertising appeal in terms of profit, health, fear, admiration, convenience, fun and pleasure, vanity, and egotism and environmental consciousness. Okay, so those kind of things are the kind of key ideas. They're hidden behind the scene of advertisement. Okay, I know that sometimes they're not going to say anything about it's about egotism, for example. It's about fun and pleasure. They simply kind of deliver the message how fun it is, by watching their AD. That still you're going to feel like they kind of say you deliver the kind of feeling like, well, you're going to have a lot of fun once you stop by our kind of restaurant or shops, okay, or once you just try out our products and services. Okay, so those kind of things. And also they're talking about executing message. So if you go to page 297, there is a exhibit 16.2. There's a 10 common executional system styles for advertisement. So musical, scientific, humor, fantasies. I'm sure that I don't have to show some example. We have seen a lot of different kind of advertisement before throughout the semester. You've seen a lot of I'm sure you see a lot of advertisement whenever you watch TV. So I don't have to just go through it one by one. Please go through that. It's nothing complicated. It also combined with the good examples, like by using the example from some of the major companies. Okay. And next thing we have to talk about is media evaluation and selection technique. So if you go to page 298, 299, once again, exhibit 16.3, there is a good example. What's the media choice, pros and cons, nothing complicated. For example, like a radio, for example, in terms of cons, they not to have a visual treatment, short advertising life of message kind of things. So if you read them through, it's very straightforward. Once again, marketing is not a rocket science. Marketing is not math or coding. It's about something you might have missed by pointing out with well summarized manners. Okay, and Sometimes you can miss it, sometimes you cannot. If you don't miss it, you can do a lot better job when it comes to working as, for example, like a marketing manager. So it's about, I know that some students in the past semester, they just complain like, well, I know that stuff. Why do you have to talk about it again? But if I just ask you guys about such questions in the exam or in the real life kind of job task, okay, can you really answer for that? That would be the problem. If you simply just deliver those messages in unsummarized, unsystematic manner, no audience can understand what you try to say, what you try to deliver. Okay, so that's the idea. You're supposed to have a structured idea and format when it comes to deliver your strategy to your team members and to your partners and to your collaborators. Okay. The second thing I'll talk about is corporate advertising. If you go to page 299, as part of newspaper kind of advertisement, they're talking about corporate advertisement. I already put that in question as part of the reading assurance. So, excuse me. So you can do that. They split the kind of cost for when it comes to advertising manufacturer's brand, because oftentimes they simply just put that specific brand advertisement for a local newspaper. It only has an impact for a geographically local market, right? If that is the case, excuse me, headquarter and the local branch companies, they can actually share the cost. Okay. And as part of the PL, okay, if you go to page 304, once again, if you go to, once you're done passing through the media types, there are media selection considerations. Okay, so one thing I like to talk about is, in this case, is audience selectivity. Okay, so if you go to page 302, they're talking about the ability of an advertising medium to reach precisely defined market. So no matter what you use, I know that there are some measures we already talked about in the previous page, cost per contact and reach and those kind of things. But if you don't specify what your target market is before moving on to or developing a promotion advertising kind of content, okay, is it going to be worth it? No, it's useless. It's meaningless. Okay, we already talked about, you guys seen the video of advertisement Peloton, okay, but it caused a lot of hypes, kind of negative kind of responses from the certain audience, certain customers as well. Did it work well when it comes to working on the audience selectivity? No, we don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, so that's why it is very critical when it comes to setting up any kind of marketing strategy. Before reaching to marketing mix, once again, you got to follow that streamline of the marketing strategy that you have seen in chapter 2. Okay, before reaching up the marketing mix, you have to specify well-specified market, target market, and based on that, you can create the content to reach the audience selectivity. Okay, so it is a very critical concept. So please keep in mind those as well. And let's move on to public regulations in page 304, 305, especially if you go to 305, there's the duties of public relations departments. So they talk about public relations, productivity, product publicity, corporate communication, public affairs, lobbying, employee and investor relations, and crisis management. Especially I like to talk about crisis management because typically the public affairs and lobbying and product publicity should be taken for granted because it should be done well. If you fail those kind of, because as part of the PR department, those are the very basic fundamental functions, essential as well, that they're supposed to do without causing any glitch and without causing any kind of problem and issues. But on top of that, things can happen. Bad things can happen. Okay? If that certain things happen, that PR department is supposed to manage and take care of those crises. Okay? So these are the very critical concepts, whatever they do in doing the PR work. Okay? So for example, you guys have seen the video about pink slime a couple of times minimum throughout the semester. And we already discussed about how McDonald's responded to that certain negative public image and responses for the hamburger patties they produced to the target market, right? So if that happens, how did they handle that? We already discussed about how they handle that. We already discussed about what was the kind of things that they've done, itty bitty things, not just kind of by using the traditional kind of public PR tools and advertisement tools. They also use a lot of social media and online marketing as well as at the same time. And these are the key functions for that part as well. Okay. So that's that. And also I'd like to talk about, especially for the sales promotion. I know that in the sales promotion, we already learned about those concepts. You guys know about those concepts. For example, like tools for consumer sales promotion with coupons and rebates, and loyalty marketing program, contents and sweepstakes, and point of purchase promotion. If you read them through, nothing complicated. You might have, you guys already all know about those kind of things. So I don't want to spend too much time on that for those things we already discussed throughout the semester. One thing I like to talk about is push money. Okay, so this is heavily related to the push strategy from chapter 15. We already discussed the push and pull strategy in chapter 15. If you're kind of still confused about it, please go back there and double check it. Okay, so based on that, to encourage those retailers and you know, the manufacturers, when it comes to talking about when do they just promote their sales. Okay, as part of that, they actually use those push money to encourage their retailers, intermediary sellers, okay, to promote their products. Okay, so it's more like pretty much similar like a push money, but in a different system and flow, different format. Okay. So that's it for the point of discussion extension for chapter 16. If you're kind of still confused about any part of what we discussed today, please contact me by emails or Skype Business.